Hello everybody, you've got my hands again today. Apologies for the terrible state of them. Life with a young kitten can be very nibbly. Anyway, I recently finished my D&D notebook, and a couple of people in my group expressed some interest in actually seeing the wonders that lie there within. So I thought maybe you might as well, and while we're at it, we might talk over some of the kind of tips that I might have in terms of making good notes and keeping your party informed. So I've been keeping this notebook since starting the Dragon's Dogma campaign, which was also coincidentally when I started this YouTube channel, so about a year ago now. As you can probably see, my handwriting is pretty terrible, but and definitely gets worse over time. I can read it, that's all that matters, but what can I say? I don't use a pen very often these days. But before I jump into things, I thought it might be useful just to expound for a moment on why we take notes in the first place and on the importance of having good notes. So believe it or not, this YouTube channel is not my job. I do have a real job that pays the bills, and that job has an awful lot of meetings. And in those meetings, you almost always need to assign two roles right from the outset. You have the chair of the meeting, the person who is essentially orchestrating the whole thing, leading the discussion, allowing people to step in, keeping them to time, not letting anyone dominate the discussion or wander from the agenda, and generally making things run smoothly. And you also have the minute taker. So a minute taker essentially is someone that writes down everything that happens in the meeting, and this is important not only for posterity, so that there is an accurate written record of everything that's happened, but also to ensure that any outstanding items from the previous meeting are picked up, to kind of record attendance, and also, most importantly, to create an agreed upon account of what happened in the meeting, because let's be honest, people don't always pay attention to what's going on, attention wanders. Two people might come out of a hotly contested debate thinking that they have quote unquote won. So it's important to have an accurate reflection of what was actually agreed, so that a month down the line, person A doesn't turn to his colleague and say, hey, where's that thing that you promised? And person B says, hey, I never promised that. And person A is like, no, you did, I remember, I was in the meeting. And person B is like, no, I did say it would be possible, but we never agreed that I would actually deliver it. To the minute you go and you see what was written, and then the debate is settled once and for all, and someone gets fired. Corporate life. So obviously D&D is not work. It is as far from work as it's possible to be, thank goodness, and yet we find a lot of the same roles popping up here as well. So for the chairperson, you can basically swap him out with the DM. Again, dictating the flow of the session, not letting anyone dominate, all of that good stuff. For person A and person B with their argument, you can swap them out as well, only now instead of them arguing about who was supposed to deliver what and by when, instead they're arguing over what they should do with this dragon egg that they've just found, or whether they should kill the king or let him live, you know, that sort of thing. And for the minute taker, well, there isn't one. At least not one that's demanded by the game, anyway. And that means no record of posterity, no single agreed upon account of the truth, and this, in my opinion, leads to anarchy. I mean, we already have a system of trust in place with people's character sheets, you know, unless you're the most micromanaging DM of all time, and I hope you're not. You've no idea if people are accurately marking down gold pieces or spell slots correctly. Now you want to add major plot points and characters on top of that? And you wonder why every campaign devolves into memes and jokery after just a few sessions? No one has a clue what's going on. You know, if someone's away from the table for a couple of weeks, they might come back and they find themselves totally disconnected with the story. Even a recap from the DM isn't going to fix everything, and that's to say nothing of remembering to circle back on outstanding items on the agenda. You know, if those items are months old, or worse, if they happen to characters who are no longer in the party because they died, well, they might as well have just not happened. And so we find that the role of a note taker comes to the fore. Now, I am supremely lucky because in my group we have two people who are just natural note takers. It's just built into our DNA. As you can probably imagine by the fact that I have this YouTube channel, I am one of those people, and we have another guy in the group who's also really good at keeping track of what happens. It's just kind of happened this way. We never actively had a discussion about it, but if one of us is taking notes, the other one isn't. If one of us is absent, the other one steps in, and if neither of us are there, then that session is essentially purged from the historical record and might as well have not happened.
Because someone erased it from the archive memory.
So then, to the notes themselves. And as I said, I started this notebook at the same time as I started this channel. So I knew going into things that I would be recording these notes as videos. And this is mostly because I personally like hearing other people's war stories when it comes to D&D. You know, this is a story we're telling after all, and I do like stories. But also it's because I am still relatively new to being a DM. At least I consider myself to be quite new. I'm still learning. So I'm trying to develop my game from seeing how other people approach things. And I find that taking detailed notes really helps to understand the flow of the game and the pacing and all of those things. So you can see that as a result, I start off with quite comprehensive notes. It's basically bullet points, which is like just a blow by blow of what happens. So here we have like character introductions, for example. This was a guy called Rez Wallin who was on the Gilded Bird, which was a ship. He was on a smuggling run. He goes to sleep and has a bad dream. A dragon looks directly at him in the dream. Then the boat is rocking terribly. He's shaken awake. There's a tentacle attacking the ship. Abandoned ship. There's a kraken. That whole thing would have been about 20 minutes in game, but there, you know, you didn't need to be there to understand exactly what's happening and why. Meanwhile, Bert then happened. His character introduction, he's kicked out of 3 taverns, he finds an alleyway, he falls asleep and gets robbed. Buildings across from him are on fire, there's 10 goblins, they haven't noticed him, he sneaks and runs away. Then we come to Natalia, walking through a forest, finds burned remains of village, and so on and so on and so on and so on. I read this now today, and mentally I am transported back to that session. I remember it in vivid detail. But then I don't just leave my notes here. Something that I then do is I go away with these notes and I sit down, and in my case I record a video, you know, adding a few of my thoughts along the way about what worked, what didn't, that sort of thing. Now this isn't new for me. I've actually been taking notes in this exact way ever since my university days, except there I would be typing up my notes after every single lecture. And so as a result, to this day, I can go back and I can look through literally every single lecture that I ever had at university. I can see exactly what we learned, I can see exactly what was talked about, I can see what people contributed to it. And for me, this counts as a form of revision, because by reading over your notes and writing them out in full sentences while it's fresh in your mind, or recording a video like this, which you then go over multiple times while you're editing and cutting out bits and expounding on important bits. And as a result, you kind of commit a lot more of what you did and learned to memory. And this is actually the approach that I took in the very first campaign that I ever played in D&D. It was Dragon of Ice Fire Pig. I've already given my thoughts on that in a video, which will be linked at the top. This was just after COVID. I'd never played D&D before, so I had no idea how much I needed to remember from session to session. It was very important to me that my notes were almost like a story in and of themselves. So if we look at the back here as an example, yeah, you can see I literally took the notes and wrote them out very neatly as full sentences, you know. I looked online, you probably can't tell because my printer was quite bad, but I actually searched online for the official art of these people, put it in, and so you can see as a result exactly what's happening. And it is written as a story almost. It's like session 1. Our story opens in the city of Neverwinter, where 4 intrepid heroes have been invited to join the Adventurers Guild, a newly established society led by the enigmatic guildmaster Sildar Hallwintle and his dwarven assistant Gundrun Rockseeker. There they are, that's what they look like, and there's the letter of invitation. Here's the people in the party, and so on and so on. If I keep going, you can see, you know, it just keeps going. That's the end of session 1 after all of that. At one point, Ragnar woke up and wowed the group with a natural 20 singing ability, which sounded like the gods themselves were traveling with them. It's just a fun moment that happened. It's inconsequential, but I laughed about it, we found it fun, and so I recorded it. You know, like I say, I was new to D&D at the time, so I kind of had no idea how much I needed to remember or know. Like, I was kind of worried that if I forgot a detail, I would somehow lose the game, because I had no context to play off. So I was just recording everything because I had no idea if it was important or not. As it was getting dark, the professor cast light on the tallest object they had, which just so happened to be Legion's helmet. That's one of the people in the party. The rest of the night, Legion served as a giant walking lighthouse for the party. Like I say, I read this and I am mentally transported back into those days. And I remember it, you know, point by point. Like, you know, we go forwards. It keeps on going, you know. We go to this town. We hear some rumors. We get a mission. We go out. There's a couple of quests we can choose. We choose this one. We go to a windmill. When they arrive at Umbridge Hill, they find the windmill under attack by a large monster. A young lady, Adabra Gwyn, a midwife and apothecary devoted to Shanti, the goddess of agriculture, was standing in the second floor window. Seeing the party approach, she calls out, "A little help?" The creature was a manticore. Noticing the party approach, it spoke into their heads. "Humans, don't interfere with this matter." Ragnar, hitting his head, "Shut up!" The professor quickly cast Bless on Ragnar, Ruskin and Valdi. "My home is in peril," said the manticore. "I need food." A manticore. Ruskin showed the manticore some hares that he caught the night before. "I have meat." The manticore's interested in the meat, but he says it's not enough, I need more. And thinking quickly, Valdi uses minor illusion to create a huge pile of sausages. The professor is confused at first. Where did Valdi get all of this sausage? What can I say? I like playing stupid characters. I don't know why, I've always enjoyed playing. I don't think I'm stupid myself. Like, I like to think I'm quite an intelligent person, and so deliberately playing naive people, just it tickles me. It really does. But yeah, you can see the breakdown of the fight. You know, we were at level 1 at this point. We took down a manticore in 1 round at level 1. This was like a huge thing for us, and it was because we worked together. We distracted him with this minor illusion. We struck at it from a distance, and then it finished with the professor stepped forwards to cast Inflict Wounds, natural 20, 29 damage. The manticore crumpled in on itself, jerking as he fell before collapsing to the ground. And there's a picture of Bernie Sanders looking like a boss, because my character looked like Bernie Sanders. There we go. So that's how I was taking notes at the time, and I'm gutted that this fizzled out, because it was a lot of fun to do. I kind of like justified it to myself in universe, because I was playing a Professor Erskine, and he was like literally, you know, because he was very learned, and I was like, this is the sort of thing he would be doing. He would be taking detailed notes. He would be writing things out like this, and so I reflected that in my own notes. And honestly, even as a DM, I would do the same thing. So as I already said, we had an amazing guy in the group who would sit basically with his laptop open through every single session, and he was just like taking notes like a court stenographer, like writing down everything that happened, which was amazing. But I don't know how much we as a party ever really looked at them. I certainly didn't, because I had my own notes that I was using as a DM. I don't know if the party looked at them. And I, as the DM, also kept my own notes. So here's the notes that I just happen to have from the very last session that we did. It's like a breakdown of everything. You know, these are DM notes. What can I say? You know, so I've got like the stat blocks of the people that we fight. I've got like, they go through some rooms. These are the different rooms that they go through. There's a bit of a kind of mini dungeon they went into. Yeah, and then there's like some. There's basically some like. Individual things that I wanted to do with certain characters at the table. So that's it. But at the very beginning, you'll see there is a breakdown of the previous session, and I would always write this immediately upon returning from the session. Even though I'd come back quite late at night, I would sit down while the session was fresh in my mind, and I'll just type this out. It would take like 5 minutes, not even. And it's really, really useful, because even though I tend to ask my party to do the recap at the end of the next session, I have the breakdown of everything that happened, and so if they forget something, I can just remind them, oh, there's also this thing. And don't forget, you're doing this because of XYZ, and I'll refer back to several sessions just to kind of keep them on track and remind them what's happening. So yeah, I would always have my own notes that I would kind of recount. And it's quite important, you know, because you can look through and you can see like, the king died, it turned out he was loaded. There were loads of Tritons in the city. They were very angry and they wanted the weapon. You were in the basement talking to Banana about the dead king when they arrived, and so on and so on and so on. So for me, you know, these types of notes, they are so invaluable and useful. From the guy in the party as well who types up all of the notes like a stenographer, like it's incredible. The only problem is, no one reads them. People are lazy, they ain't got no time to be reading. What do you think I am, some sort of nerd? Like, no one reads notes, unfortunately. But the crazy thing is, people do watch videos. If you record these things as a video, people watch it. I know my group watch these videos. My DM watches every single one of these videos, and he usually even drops into the comments on most of them. He might even drop into the comments on this one if you're lucky. And it's normally the top comment, and he'll correct me on anything that I've got wrong in my notes, which is great because I'm recounting the notes that I've taken. Sometimes I take things wrong and he steps in and corrects that. I don't think he would do that if he was just handed like this to read and be like, hey, look, I've written up all these notes. I think he'd be like, oh, great, lovely. I don't think he would read through it in detail and correct me on it. And in fact, it's for this reason as well that the last time that when I made a backstory for a couple of my characters, for Yvette, I made it as a video. When I made a backstory video for Shield Guardian, my current character, I made it as a video. Gorn's backstory, I made it as a video. Yeah, I'm doing them as videos now, partially so that you can see them if you're interested, but also just so it's recorded, because I know then that people will actually read through my backstory. Anyway, but to return to this book, like I said, it's all very much bullet points until something suddenly happens. 1 second. Here. You'll notice notes, big, nice long notes, lovely, 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 and suddenly, boom. Whoa, what happened here? What's going on? Well, what happened was our DM on the Dragon's Dogma campaign, unfortunately, he had to go into hospital, and so that campaign went on to temporary hiatus. And at the time, we thought it would just be for a couple of weeks, and so someone else kind of stepped in and said, well, I'll run a couple of sessions of Dungeon of the Mad Mage until he's out of hospital. We can play a little bit and then we can put it down at any point, really. But then those couple of weeks turned into a couple of months, and it turned out that we had a lot of fun playing through the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, so yeah, that's the campaign I'm playing now. But I didn't know it at the time, and so yeah, look at what happened to my notes. This is what most people do in the party when they take notes. This is like what I would call the absolute bare minimum. And the problem with this is it's rubbish. There is absolutely no indication here of what's actually important, of what I should like pay attention to. Basically, let's just go through this. It says, now Feshni bas relief. Well, that was just some like decoration on the wall. And I wrote it down because I thought maybe this would be important that it was now Feshni. Maybe it's like some important detail that this god was displayed. No, not at all. It's just an incidental detail. Then I've got beneath that like Nimraith, the goblins were chanting. There were some goblins like puppeteering a dead guy and they were chanting Nimraith. Okay, great. Again, that's just a little detail. And then you've got an actual important thing. Harissa Kalashtar, the vampire lady. That's important. That's the name of an actual NPC. And then right above that, Asda loyalty card, which is just an in-joke at our table, because I was like, where does everyone get their food from? And the DM's like, oh, well, there's an Asda supermarket as you walk past. Did you not see it? Yeah, they've got loyalty cards. And so I wrote that as a joke. But as I say, I look back on this now, there's like no indication here of what's important, what's interesting. And so if it wasn't for the fact that I have already recorded this session as a video, if I were trying to look through my notes and they were all like this, goodness me, good luck finding anything important, you know? It's dreadful. But then as things continue, you can see I do actually eventually settle back into the previous note-taking style. And as I already mentioned, I am making these notes with the knowledge that I am going to be recording a YouTube video down the line. So a lot of these notes are kind of told in a kind of, they're just here kind of to jog my memory more than anything else. Or there'll be kind of funny moments or jokes that I kind of need to refer to later. So I've got here, for example, this is a session from the 18th of the 3rd. And we can see straight away, we walk into a room, there's a skinned dwarf being held together by a wall of force. Someone casts a gate spell to make like a portal. Then you speak with the dead. Shumbling undead mounds, we cast darkness and run. We found a magical brick. The shumbling undead mound engulfed me. I was polymorphed into a giant crab. In that moment I became Krabu instead of Klabu, which is the name of my god. And then I wrote, and this is a really nice little detail, and this is why it's important to write these things. Crabs have 2 hearts, but I only have 1 because I gave the other to Klabu, you know? We go into another room, there's the halls of the Drow Pantheon, there's a ballroom with 2 large mutilated Drow. They're 2 like monstrosities. We are looking for monstrosities, where might we find some? So that's like me jogging my memory of like a joke at the time. My character's really stupid and naive, and so he's like talking to these monstrosities. Ah, there you are! We are looking for some monstrosities. Where might we find some? So it's just like a little memory jog. And then our DM does this thing where like every single time we fight a monster, he likes to tell us what celebrity they look like. I don't know why he does it. It's quite funny, I guess. And so in this particular case, these 2 large drow monstrosities, one of them looked like Gabrielle Cheeky from the Cheeky Girls, and the other one looked like that Lib Dem MP that she's married to. Why not, you know? And then at the back of the book, the other thing that I've got is a full inventory of everything that we were keeping in the party's bag of holding. We pooled all of our resources together and I recorded everything. That is until the character who was carrying the bag of holding died, at which point this other person in the party that takes notes took over the inventory management, and he utterly blew my note-taking out of the water here. He created a character in D&D Beyond who was our bag of holding. And as you can see, there's all the items in the bag of holding organized by type, and yeah, it's incredible. This is amateur in comparison. So anyway, that's how I do my notes. Take from it what you will. I think the important thing to note is that there are lots of different ways of doing note-taking, and they all have pros and cons. Ultimately, you need to find something that works best for you. But my hope is that if nothing else, you come out of this video with an appreciation for the importance of note-taking in general. Because honestly, I've played with people at the table who literally don't take notes ever. And they have this philosophy. They're almost like proud of this fact that they don't take notes. They just have this like badge of honor that they wear, where they're like, if it's important, I will remember it. Now, not to contradict my good friends that I play with, but you know, I pride myself on having a pretty good memory, better than most people. But even I would struggle to remember everything that's happened in an entire campaign, especially if you're playing multiple campaigns, as many people in the group do. That's multiple characters you're juggling, multiple plot threads. You've got inconsistent overlapping schedules of when you meet and how much you get through. And if you take no notes, I mean, do you remember anything? Like, it is true that during my time at the table, I very rarely refer back to my notes. And it might appear to the other people at the table as if I've just committed everything to memory. But that's simply because I've gone back over these notes, because I've made these videos, because I've spent time going over them again and again, I do retain more. If I just wrote down those notes once and then moved on, this would just be gobbledygook to me. Where was it? All of this would just be gobbledygook to me. I would have no idea what I'm talking about. Ultimately, play the game how you want to, but I've tried not taking notes before. The campaign that I was playing through after Dragon of Ice Fire Peak collapsed, the campaign I was playing through afterwards was a homebrew campaign, and I just didn't, I was kind of disappointed with how that campaign broke down, and so I kind of went into the next one with a kind of laissez-faire attitude. I wasn't really invested, and so I didn't take very many notes, and as a result I just kind of ended up feeling like I was being carried down the river by the story. Like I was going from plot point to plot point to plot point because that was clearly where the DM was pointing us, but I never really felt like I had much agency over my destiny. And by the end, you know, there we are facing this big bad, and no one's really interested in fighting this guy. Most of us can't even remember why we're here in the first place. And now to this day, like when I look back on that campaign now, it's only with the kind of vaguest of ideas of what we did. Like I remember we were in the Feywild for a while. I remember there were these pieces of key we were trying to assemble to unlock this godlike being and take his place for some reason, but yeah, it's just this kind of liminal vague thing in my mind. And in contrast, the campaigns where I've taken good, solid notes, this is so vivid in my mind. Every single one of these sessions, like I remember point by point, because I've gone over it point by point. And it feels alive. It's like a story that I watched, that I played through, that I participated in, and it's vivid in my mind. By making these notes, I feel like I'm taking the story by the reins, and I'm saying, okay, obviously the plot is taking us over here, but first, let's go to this guy that we met at such and such a place to see if he can help us. Or, oh look, we found this mysterious object. Is this what that other person was looking for all the way back in the first session? And I don't know, in my opinion, it just makes for a more impactful story, and that's what we're here for, right? So yeah, that's my notes. I'll just end by saying thank you for watching to the end. Please do consider dropping a like or subscribing to my channel. And hey, while you're here, maybe write in the comments, what type of note taker are you? What's your philosophy towards notes? And while you're doing that, take note, of the fact that you're awesome.